Another COP meeting's been taking place this past week in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This one is also called COP16, but different from the one we covered before. It focuses on combating desertification and drought, issues that plague many countries, especially developing ones. China is no exception. Desertification is particularly prominent in northern regions like Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, and Gansu. If you're not clear about where exactly are these areas, they're either part of or on the edge of the Gobi Desert. And at this COP16 of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, China's showcased a project that's proven effective in controlling desert expansion. What exactly is this project? And how could it help other countries facing similar threats? I'm Fei Fei, and this is Climate Watch, the podcast where we break down big climate questions with insights from experts and industry insiders. My goal is to help you better understand our planet and inspire action, big or small. By the way, I've also launched my newsletter on Substack called Rivers and Mountains. If you want to keep in touch, you can also find me there. Before diving into the details of China's project, I do want to share some of my own stories. I grew up in Inner Mongolia. And sandstorms were a regular part of my childhood. They engulfed cities and villages, turning the sky orange and covering everything in dust. And living in this environment, I learned early on about the importance of trees and grasses to our ecosystem. Because every spring, our school organized tree planting trips. We would bring our own shovels, plant saplings, and water them with buckets. Our teacher would then speak about the Sanbei project, the Three-North Shelterbelt Forest Program, this national project aimed at combating desertification and reduce sandstorms. As a city-dwelling student, the project didn't fully resonate with me at that time. I mean, sandstorms were a painful inconvenience, but I thought they were just a fact of life. So when I encountered the Sanbei project again at this COP16, memories came flooding back. And here is what I learned this time and realized what I missed before. Over the past 46 years, the project expanded afforestation area by 32 million hectares. By 2050, it's projected to cover over 4 million square kilometers, an area comparable to Tanzania's landmass or larger than Bulgaria. According to authorities, forest coverage in these regions has increased from 5% in 1978 to over 10% in 2020, and its target is 15% by 2050. And right now, the project is still being implemented, and it's carried out in 3 phases. Phase 1 from 1978 to 2000. Phase 2 is from 2001 to 2020. We are at the 3rd phase from 2021 to 2050. It's such a massive and ambitious project. Why did China embark on such an ambitious project? Especially, considering back in 1978, it was still very poor. To explore this question, I spoke with Dr. Cui Guipeng, Associate Professor at the Institute of Ecological Conservation and Restoration under the Chinese Academy of Forestry. He is also part of the Institute of the Great Green Wall here in China.
The Three-North project has the same age as China's reform and opening up policy. At that time, China's economic conditions were indeed difficult. However, the ecological environment in the North China was very serious at that time. In 1978, the forest coverage was only 5% in the Three-North region. On the other hand, the national economic strength is still not strong enough, but the ecological environment is deteriorating. Masses of people in the three north regions built this great green wall from scratch, relying on carrying trees on their shoulders and often on volunteering planting. The Chinese people are working hard for a better living environment, which is very valuable.
I can imagine that economy would be one of the major hurdles at that time. But what are other hurdles when building these forest projects?
Well, first, the Three North region is vast with complex and diverse natural conditions and a wide variety of ecological problems, making governance very difficult. The Three North span multiple climate zones, including arid, hyper-arid, semi-arid, and semi-humid areas. Annual precipitation in most areas is less than 400 millimeters. Water resources are very limited. And land degradation is a permanent problem. For example, a large amount of desert sand flows into the Yellow River. Groundwater is overexploited. In the past, many poor people in China lived in this area, and the pressure of high-level protection and high-quality development was very high. Second, I want to say about how to better combine ecological engineering construction with the people's wealth and income increase has always been the direction of China's effort. In the past decades, the annual output of dried and fresh fruit in the project area has increased from less than 2 million tons to 48 million tons. More than 15 million people rely on the forest and fruit industry to achieve their goals.
About the roles that communities, farmers and villages and villagers play in this effort. As you mentioned in the initial stage, the project requires a lot of the voluntary work from maybe farmers or workers in the local areas. And so, what roles have they played in this national desertification control strategy?
Okay, a series of good technologies and practices are explored through the grassroots work. On the basis, China has creatively proposed effective combating desertification models such as 柯柯牙 model, 邓口 model, Kuchi model, and Shapto model. Taking the Dengkou model as an example, the people here have established a technical system for upgrading and transforming farmland shelter belts and develop a set of surface ecological protection technologies in the construction of the latest photovoltaic energy bases.
So, solar power
Yeah,
panels.
yeah. So
And when you mentioned about, one of the hurdles when it comes to science and technology, so how have measures changed over these decades?
okay, in terms of technology, China's combating desertification is developing towards precision, mechanization, and intelligence. China attaches great importance to the transformation and application of scientific achievements in combating desertification, and numbers of new technologies and developments results has been applied.
What are the new challenges?
First, we need to further reduce the cost of this ecological project and the price of materials like raw materials for sand control. Second, we need to continue to develop automated mechanical equipment that we can crawl on sand dunes as the demand for in this regard is very urgent. We need to increase the support of science and technology. We propose that science and technology should take the lead rather than following behind.
Can you tell us more about the automated mechanical equipment?
Yeah,
Um,
the sand dunes is very hard for like cars to climb. That's also the biggest limitation of sand control methods right now in.
if we can apply these machines in these sand dunes, how would it help us in these desertification efforts? Will it enhance efficiency or does they reduce the costs?
Both, I would say.
Right now, we are also at the current UN meetings in Saudi Arabia. I can imagine you've been talking to a lot of international peers about how to control the desertification, how to enhance our efforts. And for you, from your perspective, what are the prominent problems, the common problems in most countries right now?
Well, from a global perspective, it's mainly a question of a national will and the degree of long-term and sustained investment. Well, most countries, the desertification area of the earth the countries are poor countries. Well, they find it very difficult to achieve the long-term planning and the national leadership that China has. Okay, it's difficult to sustainably guarantee human, material, and financial resources for these countries.
As you mentioned, most countries that face these problems are mostly poor countries, developing countries in Africa or Asia. And how do you think China's experience and China's role in these cooperations with other developing or global South countries can be?
Yeah, China has been carrying out South-to-South cooperation under the framework of UNCCD, which is the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, for a long time, and has actively fought for the interest of developing countries in national implementation negotiations. China has been carrying out foreign technical training for a long time and has held many training courses on desertification control and has established a United Nations International Training Center for combating desertification in Beijing. Recently, China's combating desertification technology has begun to travel across the oceans, helping many countries, including Central Asia, West Asia, and Africa, as you mentioned before, to carry out sand control technology demonstration work. My colleagues from Chinese Academy of Sciences are doing some excellent jobs in Africa, West Africa, like Mauritania, to control the flowing sand, especially on this country's coastal area. Under the record, I think it's very hard for other countries to follow China's successful practices because we have this whole country efforts from national leaders to the governor of the local governments and the people. All countries are doing this thing together. But in other countries, we found it's very hard to create this national efforts. And again, I would like to say science and technology. China is leading in science and technology for combating desertification.
Can you give us one example in terms of what kind of science or technology that China can provide or helped to other countries?
Yeah, China has doing this research and has formed a science community of desert research and desertification combating research. This is two area, but have connections. Like to stop the sand flowing is a geophysical problem. Chinese scientists doing this research had a very long history, okay, since I think the 1950s. Bolan Railway crossing the Tengli Desert. At that time, this sand-bearing railway problem occurs, and China find a very scientific and systematic way to solve this problem.
This railway started construction 7 decades ago and traverses the Taklamakan and Tonga deserts. Critics initially predicted it would be covered in sand within 3 decades, but instead, engineers used innovative methods including grass grease to stabilize shifting sands and bridges to navigate the most challenging sections within the deserts. There are also green spaces along the railway to further protect it from erosion. That includes fruit orchards that not only add a dash of green in the deserts, but also lift the locals out of poverty. The government's strong emphasis on combating desertification also inspired other sectors of the society to join in, like the NGOs. I reached out to the Nature Conservancy to learn about their experiences. Kuocheng is the director overseas Inner Mongolia under TNC's China Program. He shared his insights and stories into one of their forest projects near Hohhot in Inner Mongolia. The Shengle Forest Project covers over 2,200 hectares and aims to reduce desertification, increase forestation, and promote sustainability. He told me Inner Mongolia is extremely vulnerable because of the arid and semi-arid climates. And according to an IPCC report, desertification in arid areas has intensified over the past few decades due to warming rates twice the global average. Droughts have become more frequent, leading to drier soils and increased desertification risk. Planting trees is one solution. Trees stabilize soil, prevent sandstorms, and enhance water retention within the soil. But creating forests that can sustain is complex. Kuocheng explained to me the reasons behind.
Grasslands and plant ecosystems have distinct seasonal dynamics. For instance, in summer, grasses might cover a smaller area compared to plants like goosefoods. By winter, the coverage shifts again as grasses become denser and other plants dry out. So it's crucial to account for these seasonal changes rather than focusing solely on overall vegetation coverage.
Lin also emphasized the need to involve local communities in restoration efforts. Traditional farming and grazing practices have contributed to desertification over centuries, but they were often the only options for survival in such harsh environments. So for projects like Shengle and also the Sanbei project as well, they need to incorporate sustainable alternatives for local people so that they don't go back to the old ways of farming and grazing. For Shengle, they help locals to raise roosters in forests. This not only provides locals with a source of income, but also incentivizes them to protect the forests.
It's a delicate balance between the land and the community. For example, when a forestation project restricts grazing, it reduces locals' income sources. To address this, we need to collaborate with the communities by introducing alternatives, like raising roosters within forested areas.
And raising roosters has in turn elevated locals' awareness of environmental protection.
These roosters are priced at 128 yuan each and especially popular during holidays. They are in high demand and delicious, which motivates the locals. The forest becomes the foundation for their livelihoods. Without it, the roosters can't thrive. This directly ties economic benefits to environmental protection. It's a mutual relationship. The forest supports the community, and the community safeguards the forest.
The Shengle project is also designed as a carbon sink project. The theory is simple. Forests with carefully designed, can absorb more carbon than the soil alone can fix. That creates a surplus that companies can purchase to offset their emissions. It's still a very nascent practice, but carbon trading is definitely gaining traction. At this year's Climate Change Summit, the COP29, international carbon markets is definitely one of the highlights, so making forests a hot topic for future investments. Lin Kuocheng told me there have been companies approaching him to learn about carbon sink forest projects. China's efforts to combat desertification don't stop at the borders. China is also supporting countries in Asia and Africa in their fight against desertification. For instance, in Africa, they have a Great Green Wall initiative and also a very ambitious project aimed at creating a massive belt of trees across the Sahel region to combat desertification and restore degraded lands. Their ambition is to restore 100 million hectares of currently degraded land, sequester 250 million tons of carbon, and create 10 million green jobs by 2030. It stretches from Senegal to Djibouti and faces significant yet similar challenges with China. So China can draw on its own experiences with projects like Sanbei and provide technical expertise to these countries. This collaboration highlights the potential for international cooperation in addressing shared environmental challenges. It also underscores how the fight against desertification is a global effort requiring knowledge exchange and partners across continents. A huge thank you to Associate Professor Cui Guipeng of the Chinese Academy of Forestry and Lin Kuocheng with the Nature Conservancy China Program for sharing their insights and stories. And thank you for listening to this episode of Climate Watch. If you have any questions about climate change or suggestions for our future episodes, you can reach out to me at fei.fei@cgtn.com, fei.fei@cgtn.com. I'd love to hear from you. Or you can also find me on Substack by searching Rivers and Mountains. Don't forget to subscribe for more updates on what's happening with our planet and also what we can do to make a difference. Until next time, stay curious and take care.